The conference room floated in the darkness of space, attached to the human colony station called Horizon's Edge. Inside, Ambassador Quan sat across from creatures that looked nothing like humans. There were 12 different species in the Galactic Collective, and their representatives filled the room with strange colors, shapes, and smells. Quan had prepared for this meeting for months. The humans had only discovered they were not alone in the universe 5 years ago. Since then, they had tried to be friendly, to learn, to trade. The galaxy was old, and humanity was new. Quan knew this. He wore his best suit and kept his voice calm and respectful. Across from him sat High Arkham Vextar, a being that looked like a mantis made of crystal. When it spoke, the translator device turned its clicking sounds into words. "Your species claims ownership of 17 worlds," Vextar said. "This is unacceptable. These worlds contain resources needed by the collective." Quan kept his hands flat on the table. "Those worlds have human colonies. Families live there. Children. We've worked hard to build homes on those planets." "Your labor is irrelevant," another alien said. This one had too many eyes and skin that changed colors. "The collective has existed for 3,000 of your years. We have rules. New species must earn their place. You must give us what we need." "We're willing to trade," Quan said. "We can share resources. There's enough for everyone." Vextar made a sound that the translator called laughter, though it sounded like breaking glass. "You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. This is us being generous. You will surrender your outer colonies within 10 of your days. You will provide us with the minerals, metals, and biological samples we require. If you refuse, we will take them." Quan felt his heart beat faster. He had studied the collective's military strength. They had weapons that could burn planets, ships that moved faster than anything humans had built. He knew humanity could not win a direct fight. But he also knew something about humans that these aliens did not. "If you attack our colonies," Quan said slowly, "you will regret it." The room fell silent. Then, aliens began making sounds that the translator struggled to interpret. They were laughing. All of them. "You threaten us?" Vextar stood up, its body towering over the table. "You are children playing with fire. We have conquered 40 systems. We have ended species that refuse to cooperate. What can you possibly do to us?" Quan stood too. He was smaller, softer, made of flesh instead of crystal or scales or light. But he looked Vextar in the eyes and said, "You'll find out." The meeting ended badly. Quan returned to his ship and sent a message to Earth. He told them what happened. He told them the collective would attack. 10 days passed. Humanity used that time to evacuate what they could from the outer colonies. But 3 research stations were too far away. They couldn't leave in time. Station Gamma 7 was one of them. It housed 3,000 people. Scientists studying alien plants. Engineers building better engines. Families who had volunteered to live on the edge of human space. The collective fleet arrived at Station Gamma 7 like a storm. 15 massive warships surrounded the small station. The station's commander tried to surrender. He broadcast messages saying they were unarmed, that they had civilians, that they would leave peacefully. Vextar himself commanded the fleet. He ordered his ships to fire. The station broke apart in seconds. Metal twisted and melted. The air rushed out into space. People died instantly, frozen and suffocated. 3,000 humans gone in a moment. The collective recorded everything and broadcast it across. Human space. The message was simple. You are now subjects of the Galactic Collective. Obey or die. Resistance will be removed. Your species is now ours to command. On Earth, in the military command center buried deep under a mountain, Fleet Admiral Tay watched the broadcast. He was an old man who had served in Earth's Navy for 40 years. He had hoped to retire soon to spend time with his grandchildren. He had hoped humanity's first contact with aliens would bring peace and knowledge. Now he watched 3,000 people die on his screen. He saw the aliens laugh as they destroyed the station. He saw them send their message of conquest. Tay picked up the communicator that connected him to every human military base, every ship, every outpost across 17 worlds. His voice was steady and cold. All forces to battle stations. This is not a drill. The Galactic Collective has committed an act of war against humanity. They have murdered our people. They believe we will surrender. They believe we are weak because we are young. They are wrong. He paused, looking at the faces of his officers around him. Young and old. Men and women. All of them waiting for orders. Send a message to the collective, Tay said. Tell them this. You have just declared war on humanity. Congratulations. You have just declared war on the most lethal species in the galaxy. You will learn what that means. Across human space, every military base activated. Every warship began to move. Every soldier, pilot, and sailor checked their weapons. Humanity had spent 10,000 years fighting itself, learning war, perfecting the art of destruction. They had stopped fighting each other only recently, hoping to find peace among the stars. The aliens had just reminded them why they were so good at war. And now the galaxy would learn the same lesson. The war had begun. High Archon Vexstar expected the humans to surrender within days. His intelligence officers told him that humanity had only 30 warships ready for combat. The collective had 300 in this sector alone. The math was simple. The humans would see reason. But 3 days after the destruction of Station Gamma 7, something strange happened. Every human ship in the sector went dark. They stopped broadcasting. They stopped responding to communications. The collective sensors could not find them. They are hiding, Vexstar told his officers. Cowards. When they emerge to surrender, we will be merciful. He was wrong. Commander Minho led a strike force of 8 human ships. They were small and fast, designed for quick attacks. His crew had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not come back. Every person on his ship had lost someone at Station Gamma 7. The engineer's sister, the navigator's best friend. Minho's own cousin had been a teacher there. They approached the collective staging area at the edge of the Kepler system. 40 enemy ships floated in formation, refueling and preparing for their next attack on human colonies. The collective believed that they were safe. Their sensors were the best in the galaxy. Nothing could approach without being detected. Minho's ships drifted in on ballistic trajectories. All power systems shut down except life support. They looked like space debris, like broken pieces of destroyed stations. The collective sensors ignored them. Why would anyone be crazy enough to fly without engines or shields? When they were close enough, Minho gave the order. Light them up. 8 human ships roared to life at once. Their weapons fired before the collective could react. Missiles slammed into fuel depots. Nuclear mines that had been floating like garbage suddenly activated, creating a chain of explosions. 3 enemy ships died in the first 10 seconds. The collective fleet tried to respond, but the humans were already moving. They flew through the debris field, using their own destroyed equipment as cover. They fired and moved, never staying in one place. When a human ship took damage, it didn't retreat. It accelerated toward the nearest enemy and rammed it at full speed. The collective watched in horror as human ships chose to crash into them rather than be captured. Captains who could have escaped instead turned their dying vessels into weapons. This was not how civilized species fought war. This was madness. Minho's ship took a hit that destroyed half his engines. He could have ordered his crew to evacuate. Instead, He targeted the largest collective warship and pushed his remaining engines to maximum. "It's been an honor," he said to his crew. They said it back to him. Then they struck the enemy ship like a hammer, breaking it in half. The Battle of Kepler staging area lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, 15 collective ships were destroyed or crippled. All 8 human ships were gone, but they had taken almost half the enemy fleet with them. The surviving collective officers sent reports back to their high command. The reports all said the same thing. The humans fight like they have nothing to lose. While the military fought, humanity's civilians mobilized. On Mars, in the orbital shipyards that humanity had built to construct peaceful trading vessels, engineer Hannah worked 18-hour days. She had been designing passenger ships. Now she converted them into weapons. "We need more guns," she told her team. "Strip out the passenger decks. Install missile pods. I don't care if it looks pretty. I care if it kills the enemy." Her team worked without rest. They took luxury cruise ships and turned them into assault carriers. They took mining vessels and filled them with explosives, creating automated bombs that could be sent into enemy formations. Every factory on Mars, on Earth, on the Moon, switched to military production. The collective intercepted human communications and grew confused. The humans were celebrating. Their recruitment centers had lines of volunteers. Their factories ran at maximum capacity. Their children sang songs about victory. This was a species at war, but they acted like it was a festival. "They enjoy this," one collective analyst said, reading the reports. "They're having fun." 2 weeks after Kepler, the collective attacked a human colony world called New Haven. They sent 20 ships and expected an easy victory. Instead, they found the planet evacuated and the orbital space filled with mines, automated defense platforms, and hidden missile batteries. Lieutenant Una commanded the fighter wing stationed at New Haven. She was 24 years old and had been a civilian pilot before the war. Now she flew a military fighter that had been built in 6 days from spare parts and hope. "Remember your training," she told her wing. "Fast and unpredictable. Make them chase you into the traps." The collective ships advanced carefully, destroying mines as they found them. Una's fighters launched from hidden positions in the asteroid belt. They flew in patterns that made no sense, that broke every rule of space combat. They separated and rejoined, led enemy ships into debris fields, and fired from impossible angles. One of Una's pilots had an engine failure. Instead of ejecting, he flew his damaged fighter directly into a collective warship's bridge. The enemy ship went dark. Dead in space. Una herself led 3 enemy fighters on a chase through the remains of the old space station, using the wreckage of humanity's own buildings as cover. She flew through gaps too small for the larger alien ships, watching as they crashed into debris trying to follow her. When she finally ran out of ammunition, she ejected and watched as her wingman finished off the last enemy fighter. The Battle of New Haven ended with 12 collective ships destroyed and 8 retreating. Humanity had lost 40 fighters and 3 defense platforms. By military mathematics, it should have been a collective victory. They had killed more humans, but the collective had lost ships. Expensive, irreplaceable warships that took years to build. The humans had lost fighters that they could replace in days. In the collective high command chamber, the military leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. They played recordings of the battles. They watched humans ram their ships into enemy vessels. They watched human pilots choose death over retreat. They watched civilians cheer as their cities prepared for war. "We have never seen anything like this," one admiral said. "They fight without fear. They replace losses faster than we can inflict them. How do we defeat an enemy that treats death as an acceptable tactic?" High Archon Vextar sat in silence. He had started this war believing it would last a week. Now, 3 weeks in, The collective had lost 40 ships, and the humans showed no signs of stopping. "Send more forces," he ordered. "Double our fleet strength. They are still primitives. We simply need to hit them harder." But deep down, for the first time in his long life, Vexstar felt something he had never experienced in war. He felt doubt. The Galactic Council met in their grand chamber, a space station the size of a small moon. Representatives from all 12 member species gathered in emergency session. They had not called such a meeting in 300 years. The last time was for a plague that threatened to wipe out 2 entire species. Now they met because of humans. Council member Jiho stood before the assembly. He was human, one of the few who had left Earth before the war to study with the collective. He had spent 10 years learning their ways, trying to build bridges between humanity and the galaxy. Now he stood accused of being a traitor by his own people and a curiosity by the aliens. "You must stop this war immediately," Jiho said. His voice shook with emotion. "You do not understand what you have done. Humans are not like your species. We have a different history." High Archon Vexstar interrupted him. "We have studied your history. You are a young species that has barely left your home system. You have primitive weapons and simple tactics. Yes, you fight with passion, but passion is not enough against superior technology." "That is where you are wrong," Jiho said. He activated a holographic display. Images filled the chamber. Humans fighting each other with swords, with guns, with bombs, with weapons that burned entire cities. "This is what you do not understand. We are not warriors by nature. We do not have a caste system with soldiers and civilians. When humans go to war, everyone becomes a warrior." The council members looked at the images. They saw humans in different time periods, different cultures, all fighting. They saw the same pattern over and over. Total commitment to conflict. "These are your civil wars?" An alien representative asked. "You fight your own kind this way?" "Yes," Jiho said quietly. "For 10,000 years, humans fought each other. We developed weapons, tactics, and strategies through constant warfare. We studied war because we lived it every generation. World War I, World War II. We have names for our conflicts because there were so many of them." He showed them more images. Chemical weapons, nuclear explosions. "We invented devices that could end all life on our planet. We built them, aimed them at ourselves, and lived with the threat of total destruction for 100 years. We called it mutually assured destruction. We knew that if we used these weapons, everyone would die. And we still kept them, just to make sure no one else would use theirs first." The chamber fell silent. Several council members looked physically ill. "That is madness," someone said. "Yes," Jiho agreed. "And now you have given that madness a common enemy. You have united a species that spent its entire history fighting itself. Every human alive knows what war is. Every human has ancestors who died in conflicts. We have inherited 10,000 years of combat experience. And you thought we would surrender after one battle." A council analyst named Aaron approached the display. She was a scientist, not a soldier, and she had been studying human biology since the war began. "It is worse than you think," she said. "I have examined human physiology. They have biological responses to danger that other species do not possess." She showed brain scans of humans in combat. This is what they call adrenaline. When threatened, their bodies flood with chemicals that make them faster, stronger, and less sensitive to pain. They can ignore injuries that would disable our soldiers. I have reports of humans fighting with broken bones, with wounds that should be fatal, continuing to battle until they physically cannot move. More images appeared. A human medic named Bora running across an active battlefield to reach a wounded soldier. Explosions all around her. She should have died 10 times over. But she kept moving, kept running, pulled the wounded man to safety. Why would she do this? Aaron asked. The wounded soldier was not family, not even from the same region of Earth. She did not know him before that day. But she risked her life because humans have this concept they call leave no one behind. They will die to save strangers. Vexstar shifted uncomfortably. This is just data. Individual examples. They cannot sustain this level of commitment. They will tire. They will see the futility of fighting us, will they? Jiho pulled up a human military manual. This is their doctrine for asymmetric warfare. It means fighting an enemy that is stronger than you. They have entire books on this subject. They teach it in their schools. They know they cannot beat you in a fair fight, so they will never fight fair. He showed them human guerrilla tactics, ambushes, traps, psychological warfare. On Earth, we have a saying, you do not have to win every battle. You just have to make winning too expensive for the enemy. Humans are very good at making war expensive. The Council watched recordings of recent battles. They saw human pilots using their own destroyed ships as cover. They saw human soldiers setting up defensive positions in locations that should have been indefensible, then holding them against impossible odds. They saw humans turning every disadvantage into a weapon. They use nuclear weapons in space combat, one admiral reported. Frequently, without hesitation. These are weapons that most civilized species banned after developing them. Humans build them into standard missiles. They booby-trapped their own corpses, another said. We lost an entire boarding party because they had placed explosives on dead humans. Who thinks to do that? Jiho closed his eyes. We do, because we have done it to each other for thousands of years. You are fighting a species that has studied war the way you study mathematics or art. War is our oldest science. The Council debated for hours. Some wanted to escalate, to bring their full military might against humanity. Others wanted to negotiate. But pride held them back. How could they admit defeat to a species they had dismissed as primitive? Finally, they agreed to make one attempt at peace. They would offer humanity reasonable terms. Shared resources. Cultural exchange. An end to hostilities. Ambassador Quan received the offer on behalf of humanity. He read it carefully. Then he sent back humanity's response. The terms are as follows, he wrote. 1. Complete and unconditional surrender of all collective military forces. 2. Reparations for the 3,000 civilians you murdered. 3. High Archon Vexstar will be delivered to human authorities to stand trial for war crimes. 4. The collective will disband its military and submit to human oversight for 100 years. 5. Humanity will take a permanent seat on the Galactic Council with veto power over all decisions. These terms are non-negotiable. When the collective received this response, they thought it was a joke. Then they realized the humans were serious. They are demanding we surrender to them? Vexstar said. We have 300 ships to their 30. We have technology they cannot match. They have won a few minor skirmishes and they think they have won the war? Jiho looked at him sadly. You still do not understand. Humans are not trying to win this war quickly. They are preparing for a long war. A total war. They will fight for 10 years, 100 years if necessary. They will sacrifice millions of their own people if that is what it costs. Because they know something you do not. And what is that? Vexstar demanded. That we have already fought longer, bloodier wars against ourselves and survived. Compared to what we have done to each other, fighting you will be easy. The Council rejected humanity's terms. They voted to continue the war. They would show these primitives that the collective had not maintained peace for 3,000 years by being weak. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Tay received word that the peace offer had been rejected. He was not surprised. He turned to his staff and said 4 words that would echo through the rest of the war. Accelerate all offensive operations. The real war was about to begin. Chief Engineer Sunho had a gift for understanding how things worked. Before the war, he designed engines for cargo ships. Now he sat in a laboratory surrounded by pieces of captured collective technology, trying to figure out how to beat it. This shield generator, he said to his team, took them 300 years to perfect. We are going to improve it in 3 months. His assistant looked skeptical. How? We barely understand their science. Sunho smiled. We do not need to understand it completely. We just need to understand how to break it. Once you know how to break something, you know how to make it stronger. He was right. Human engineers had a different approach to technology than the collective. The aliens built things to last forever, to be perfect. Humans built things to work right now, to solve the immediate problem. Where the collective spent decades in careful research, humans tried, failed, learned, and tried again in days. Within weeks, Sunho's team had reverse-engineered collective shield technology and found its weaknesses. They discovered that the shields could not adjust quickly to changing frequencies. Human weapons were redesigned to cycle through frequencies, punching through defenses that had protected collective ships for centuries. But technology was only one front of the war. On the ground, humanity proved even more terrifying. Colonel Day commanded human forces on Threshold, a planet the collective wanted for its rare minerals. The collective sent 10,000 soldiers, expecting to overwhelm the 500 humans defending the colony. They had superior weapons, better armor, and air support. They did not expect the humans to fight like demons. They had studied every war in human history. He knew how to defend against a superior force. He used the terrain, setting up ambushes in narrow valleys. He used the weather, attacking during storms when the collective sensors were limited. He used psychology, making the enemy afraid to advance because every step might trigger a trap. The collective soldiers began calling Threshold the Ghost Planet. They would secure an area, only to have humans appear behind them somehow. They would set up camps that seemed safe, then wake up to find their sentries missing, taken silently in the night. They would advance down a road, and explosives would detonate not where they were, but where they would run to escape. The humans are not fighting to kill us, one collective officer reported. They are fighting to break our will. They want us to be afraid. It was working. Collective soldiers started to refuse orders to advance. They sat in their fortified positions, too scared to move. Meanwhile, human forces, outnumbered 20 to 1, controlled more of the planet every day. They used another human innovation, biological warfare. Not the crude kind that killed everything. Something smarter. Human scientists studied the collective species and created diseases that made them sick but not dead. Sick enough to need medical care. Sick enough to slow down their operations. Each sick soldier needed 2 more soldiers to care for them, multiplying the effect. This is a war crime. The collective protested. Humans responded by reminding them about Station Gamma 7 and the 3,000 civilians. The collective stopped complaining. In space, the war evolved in ways the collective had never imagined. Pilot Nari became famous for a tactic called the Dead Man's Drift. She would fly straight at enemy ships, take damage, then shut down all her systems. To the enemy sensors, her ship looked destroyed. They would ignore her and move on. Then, when they were close enough, Nari would restart her systems and fire everything she had at point-blank range. The first time she did it, she destroyed 3 collective ships before they understood what happened. After that, enemy pilots became paranoid. Every piece of debris might be a human ship playing dead. They are making us afraid of our own sensors, a collective admiral complained. We cannot trust our instruments because humans keep finding ways to trick them. The psychological warfare extended beyond the battlefield. Humans broadcast messages to collective forces. Not threats. Something worse. Information. Do you know why you are fighting this war? The broadcasts asked. Your leaders destroyed a civilian station. They murdered families, children, scientists who had no weapons. Is that the kind of species you want to be? Some collective soldiers began to question their orders. Desertion rates increased. The collective had to station security forces to watch their own troops, reducing combat effectiveness even more. 6 months into the war, humanity deployed something that terrified the entire galaxy. The Genesis Array Dot. It was not a weapon system in the traditional sense. It was a network of devices placed around stars that could destabilize them, make them explode, destroy entire solar systems. Humanity tested it on an uninhabited star system near collective space. The star went supernova. Planets were vaporized. The shock wave could be detected across half the galaxy. Then humanity made an announcement. We have placed Genesis arrays around 17 collective star systems. We have also placed them around 3 human systems. If you continue this war, if you try to wipe us out, we will activate all of them. Your worlds will die. Our worlds will die. Everyone dies together. The Galactic Council held another emergency meeting. They were in shock. They would destroy their own worlds? Someone asked. Jiho stood before them again, looking tired. I told you. We lived under the threat of mutually assured destruction for 100 years on Earth. We are comfortable with the idea that if we cannot win, no one wins. Can you say the same? The collective realized they were fighting a species that valued spite over survival. Humans would rather die and take their enemies with them than surrender. This was not a species that could be conquered by conventional means. High Archon Vextar called for maximum escalation. He wanted to destroy Earth itself, to end humanity before they could destroy more collective worlds. But his own military officers refused. If we destroy Earth, one admiral said, the humans in other systems will activate the Genesis arrays. We will lose 17 worlds. Trillions of lives. And for what? To prove we are stronger? We already know humans do not care about strength. They care about making us pay the highest price possible. Vextar looked around the room. His officers would not meet his eyes. They were afraid. Not of death in battle. They were afraid of fighting an enemy that had no fear of death. How do we defeat them? Vextar asked quietly. No one had an answer. Meanwhile, on Earth, Fleet Admiral Tay reviewed casualty reports. Humanity had lost 50,000 people in 6 months of war. The collective had lost 300,000. By numbers, humanity was winning. But Tay knew the truth. Every human death hurt. Every name on the casualty list was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. Humanity celebrated their victories, but they mourned their losses deeply. How long can we sustain this? An aide asked. Tay thought about it. He thought about human history. World War II lasted 6 years and killed tens of millions. The 100 Years' War lasted, as the name suggested, over a century. As long as necessary, he said. Humans are stubborn. We do not quit. We cannot quit. It is not in our nature. And that, more than any weapon or tactic, was what the collective could not understand. They were fighting a species that had survived itself. Compared to what humans had done to each other, this war was almost merciful. Almost. The war ended not with a grand battle, but with a quiet surrender. High Archon Vextar was delivered to human authorities in chains. His own people had arrested him and brought him to Earth. They stood before Fleet Admiral Tay and Ambassador Quan with their heads bowed. Not in respect, but in exhaustion. We surrender. the collective's new representative said. She was young for her species, chosen specifically because she had opposed the war from the beginning. We accept your terms. All of them. The handover happened in the ruins of Station Gamma 7. Humanity had insisted on this location. The debris still floated in space, twisted metal and frozen fragments that had once been homes, laboratories, lives. 3,000 names were painted on a memorial wall that human engineers had built in the center of the debris. Field.Quan read the terms aloud. Complete demilitarization of the collective fleet. Reparations paid over 50 years. War crime trials for those responsible for civilian deaths. Human representation on the Galactic Council with full veto power. The collective agreed to everything. Why did you not make these offers earlier? Quan asked. We would have accepted peace at any time. All you had to do was acknowledge what you did wrong. The collective representative looked at the names on the wall. 3,000 humans who had died because their people thought humanity would be easy to conquer. Pride, she said simply. We were too proud to admit we made a mistake. By the time we understood what you were, it was too late to stop. Vextar was tried in an international court on Earth. The trial lasted 3 months. Evidence was presented. Recordings of the attack on Station Gamma 7, orders he had given, intercepted communications where he had laughed about human deaths. His own people testified against him. He was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. Humans built a special facility for him, comfortable but isolated. He would live out his remaining years knowing that he had destroyed his own civilization's pride by underestimating a species he thought was primitive. The first year after the war was difficult. The collective dismantled their military, keeping only small defensive forces. They paid reparations to families who lost loved ones. They opened their borders and their libraries, sharing technology and knowledge with humanity. But the hardest part was psychological. The galaxy had to adjust to a new reality. Humans were no longer the newcomers, the primitives to be dismissed. They were the species that had fought the collective to a standstill and one. Engineer Sunho led teams that helped rebuild collective infrastructure. He worked alongside alien scientists, teaching them human engineering methods. You think too carefully, he told them. Sometimes you need to try something and see if it works. Failure is not shameful. It is how you learn. Pilot Nari retired from the military and became an instructor, teaching collective pilots human tactics. Most of her students were terrified of her at first. She was the pilot who had destroyed 9 enemy ships by herself, who had invented techniques that the collective still did not fully understand. But she was also patient and kind. The point of learning war, she told her students, is so you never have to use it. We teach you how we fight so that no one will be stupid enough to fight us again. On Threshold, Colonel Day helped establish a joint human collective colony. Former enemies worked side by side, mining the rare minerals that both species needed. At first there was tension. Collective soldiers who had fought on Threshold could not look human soldiers in the eye, ashamed of what the war had revealed about their own weaknesses. Day addressed this directly. You are not weak, he told them. You simply had never fought a total war before. You should be grateful for that. It means your species is better than mine. We know war too well. You are learning it for the first time. Learn from us, but do not become us. 5 years after the war ended, the new Galactic Assembly met for the first time. It was no longer the Galactic Collective. The name had been changed to represent a more equal partnership. Representatives from all species gathered, including 3 human delegates. Fleet Admiral Tay, now retired but serving as Earth's senior representative, gave the opening address. He stood before beings from 12 different species, some of whom still had trouble meeting his eyes. He was an old man now, his hair completely white, his face lined with the weight of decisions that had sent thousands to their deaths. "You saw us as primitive because we still fought wars," he began. "We saw war as a failure of diplomacy, as something to be avoided at all costs. But when you gave us no choice, you discovered something important. Humans are very, very good at things we hate doing." He paused, letting the words sink in. "For 10,000 years, we fought ourselves. We developed weapons that could end all life on our planet. We studied tactics and strategies that could maximize death and destruction. We did this not because we loved war, but because we were very bad at peace." The chamber was silent. Everyone knew human history now. It was required study in collective schools, a warning about the dangers of underestimating others. "But we learned something from all that death and suffering," Tay continued. "We learned that war is hell. We learned that victory has costs that numbers cannot measure. We learned that the best warrior is the one who never has to fight." He gestured to the collective representatives. "You learned this lesson the hard way. You attacked us thinking we would be easy to defeat. Instead, you discovered that the reason we seemed peaceful was not because we were weak. It was because we understood the true cost of war better than anyone in the galaxy." Tay's voice grew softer. "You have asked humanity to take a role in maintaining galactic peace, to be your military arm, your defense against external threats. We accept this responsibility, but with one condition. We will fight to protect this galaxy, but we will do everything in our power to make sure fighting is always the last option." He pulled up images on the display. Human soldiers working with alien engineers. Human medics treating collective wounded. Human teachers in alien schools. This is what we want. Not conquest. Not revenge. We want to make sure that what happened between us never happens again. To anyone, the Assembly voted unanimously to accept humanity's proposal. The galaxy would have a unified defense force, led by human commanders, but composed of all species. They would protect against external threats, against pirates, against anyone who sought to harm the innocent. But more importantly, they would work to prevent wars before they started. Humanity established the Office of Diplomatic Resolution, teaching other species human negotiation techniques. Not to make everyone human, but to share what humans had learned from millennia of solving problems through violence and learning. Slowly and painfully, that there were better ways. The memorial at Station Gamma 7 became a pilgrimage site. Beings from across the galaxy came to see the 3,000 names to understand what had been lost and why. A second wall was built listing the collective soldiers who had died in the war. Over 300,000 names dotted the dedication of the second wall. Ambassador Quan spoke to the gathered crowd. "We do not separate our dead from yours," he said. "We do not say our 3,000 matter more than your 300,000. Every name here represents a life cut short. Every name represents someone who will never go home. War is not noble. War is not glorious. War is this." He gestured to the walls of names. "We remember them all. Not to celebrate victory, but to remind ourselves of the price of failure. The failure to communicate. The failure to understand. The failure to see others as worthy of the same respect we demand for ourselves." 10 years after the war, humanity's role in the galaxy was secure. They were teachers, warriors, diplomats, and peacekeepers. They shared their technology and learned from others. They built ships together, explored unknown regions together, and defended their shared space together. But the most important change was not military or political. It was understanding. The galaxy had learned that humanity was not special because they were better or stronger. They were special because they had survived their own worst instincts and chosen to be better. They had looked into the abyss of total war, mutually assured destruction and genocide, and had decided that there must be a better way. The lesson was simple. The most lethal species in the galaxy was also the one most committed to peace, because they, more than anyone, knew what the alternative cost. In a quiet ceremony attended only by close friends and family, Pilot Nari married a collective officer she had fought against during the war. They had met during the reconstruction efforts, two former enemies learning to see each other as people rather than targets. At the wedding, someone asked them how they moved past the war, past the killing. Nari's husband answered, "We learned that we were both following orders we thought were right. We were both protecting what we loved." Understanding this does not erase what happened, but it means we do not have to keep making the same mistakes. And perhaps that was the real victory. Not the military triumph, not the political restructuring, but the understanding that even the most lethal species in the galaxy could choose mercy, could choose forgiveness, could choose to build rather than destroy.